Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. I'm Colin True, and today it's the Rock Fight of the Year. Back in March on the show, I threw some rocks at outdoor brand Rab over the launch of their new adventure cycling line, Cinder. Well, Rab heard that episode and is joining the fight by sending me product director Tim Fish to talk about the Cinder launch, the state of making stuff in the outdoor industry, and Rab's sustainability initiatives. But first, I need to tell you what's happening over at Gear Trade, your home for new outdoor gear and apparel. For the month of October, you can earn up to 80% when you consign your unwanted outdoor stuff that's just collecting dust in your garage, basement, or gear closet. Head to GearTrade.com, click on the Sell Your Gear tab, and let Gear Trade put cash money in your pocket. GearTrade.com. Earlier this year, when Rab, the UK-based outdoor gear and apparel maker, announced the launch of Cinder, their adventure cycling line, I couldn't get on the microphone fast enough to talk about it. Because while I understand that outdoor brands need to make things and sell things, it seemed to me that this was a bad move for Rab. And I've linked that episode in the show notes in case you missed it. Like we've talked about in the show with a few different brands, breaking into a new category is costly and often hard to find a niche in already crowded market spaces. Combine that with the fact that we already have a stuff problem and lack good circular solutions that are widely adopted across the outdoor industry, and this seemed to me like a move that would probably not pay off in the long run. And to be clear, the basis of this fight was broader than any one brand. I may have used the launch of Cinder as an example, but my point is that while fresh revenue in a new category is a tasty proposition, it's a lot of work to be known for one category and then try to gain authenticity in another. And it's also complicated by the sustainability issue. We need to be making less stuff as an industry, not more. So my overall assertion was that perhaps Rab should just stay in their lane. But in their defense, Rab does a lot of interesting things when you compare them with the larger brands in the outdoor space. Most of their line is focused on core activities, not nearly as much quote-unquote lifestyle merch. And when it comes to transparency to the consumer of what is actually in their stuff, they are up there with Houdini as a brand trying to change the conversation thanks to their Material Facts initiative that puts nutritional label style hang tags on their products so people can start to understand what they're actually buying. So I was excited when Rab reached out to fight back. I mean, that's been the point of the Rock Fight since day one. I'll throw some stones, but I'm also not above having them thrown back. And I welcomed Rab sending me their director of product, Tim Fish, to come on the show. Tim has spent his entire career making outdoor products, and as the product director for Rab, he oversaw the launch of Cinder and the creation of Material Facts. Tim is here to defend Cinder, talk about what will get the outdoor industry to apply more circular thinking to how we make things, as well as Rab's consumer-focused nutrition label. Welcome back to the Rock Fight. Today, it's a brand rebuttal with Rab's Tim Fish. All right, well, let the record show that sometimes when rocks are thrown, people show up to throw rocks back, because we're here with Tim Fish, who's the product director at Equip Outdoor Technologies, who's the parent company for Rab and Low Alpine. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
You know, I always hoped when we kind of talked about the Cinder launch by Rab a few months back. It was the early days of the show, still kind of technically early days of the show, but I always hoped that somebody would come on and have this conversation. I never really expected it to happen, so I'm so psyched you're here.
I actually listened to it recently. I was like, oh man, I missed this. If I'd seen that, you'd have got an email within a week.
I'm psyched to have you on. I've taken a pretty specific stance on kind of the outdoor industry, because I think a lot of things from where I sit and from my career there and just sort of observing kind of the space in general, it feels a little disingenuous to me. I think generally speaking, brands claim to care about the environment and our outdoor playgrounds. And I use a very broad brush when I talk brands. I know, like we're talking, like Rab's probably more of a mid-sized brand compared to the, the Patagonias and the North Faces of the world. But, we speak in generalities sometimes. But they claim to care about the environment and outdoor playgrounds, but then we just produce way too much stuff and make products that are harmful to manufacture with no clear roadmap to keep them out of a landfill. Because ultimately, that's kind of right now where things are going to end up at some point, even if we keep them in rotation for a long time. So, they market off the back of innovation. There haven't been a lot of technical breakthroughs. That was interesting working at a textile manufacturer of where it's the next big technical breakthrough. I don't know if there's going to be one. We kind of created a lot of stuff. So, speaking broadly, outdoor brands are not that much different now than really any other fashion brand at this point. So when I kind of say that, and it's kind of a cynical point of view, I mean, do you agree with that assessment as someone who works at brands and has worked in product for a long time?
It's an interesting one, that, because we do care about the environment, and I don't think we're always doing what we've always done. I think if you look at the outdoor industry and brands and new product and where we focus for the last few years, it's not always about product. Actually, it's about environment, people, planet, reducing our impact. And we've learnt a lot. We've improved. We've reduced what we can. So I think it's not always the same. People, if you boil it down, we live in a capitalist society. Everyone's got a mortgage to pay. If there wasn't an outdoor industry that made stuff, you wouldn't be doing this podcast.
100%.
But we all need to do it. We all want to go and play in it. We all love new toys. That feeds this cycle. Equally, we can reduce our impact by still maintaining that as well. So I think, are we getting better? Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's kind of me to do. Do you think are we doing as well as can be expected when it comes to making stuff? Could we be doing better when it just comes to making stuff?
Yes and no. So I think, again, you'd split that into two. So I suppose that comes down to expectations. And expectations based on what? If it's expectations of performance by an end customer, we could make some of the most amazing things, but it'd be $2,000. No one's going to pay that. So you need to kind of register it that amazing performance at an affordable price point is key. So we could make things that are completely unattainable, just a pie in the sky kind of thing. So it's balancing up expectations for value. I think the other side of that, expectations about kind of product from a CSR and an environmental point of view, is different again. So it's what are people's expectations? And that's what I think we're probably going to lead into talking about quite a bit. I think the outdoor industry and outdoor brands and outdoor product is better than high street fashion, in my opinion. The outdoor industry doesn't make fast fashion. Is it fashion biased? Yes, but it's not fast. So it's fashionable, but it's not kind of high churn rate, high turn.
But let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Is that true? Because I would argue that the vast majority of stuff that outdoor brands sells are like t-shirts, trucker caps, accessories, branded materials, and the stuff that we market off the back of, the technical gear and the presentation to the public is probably almost the smallest parts of the. But now Rab might be different. I think you guys are a little more core.
We're different. Yeah, and I think that's where we are a bit different. We're kind of, and it's probably could be a bit of a commercial issue we sometimes have. We are very core, very authentic, and we sell proper outdoor kit to people that are using it in the outdoors a lot of time. Commercially, would we like to sell more t-shirts and trucker caps? Probably, yeah, because it's going to help the bottom.
Your sales manager would.
Yeah, damn right, yeah. And my boss would, 100%. Equally, if we start selling more organic cotton tees, we need to start measuring the kind of the impact of that as well. So,
well, and I guess the source of my beef is that I just expect more from outdoor brands because there seems to be a mission, right? There's the mission of what we're here to serve. And the brands all have to play in the same sandbox as fast fashion brands for the most part. In terms of how stuff gets made is the same for everybody. And I'm not saying it's fair that maybe I should hold them to higher standards.
How it gets made. I'm not sure. I think how it gets made kind of is, but what it's made with and how it's looked after once it's purchased is different. So fundamentally, a lot of outdoor gear is nylon. It's overbuilt. It's going to last forever if it's looked after. So that's where we do a lot of kind of service centre work and education on extending the longevity of product. Mm-hmm. So we wash, we repair, we will do what we can to keep things out of landfill, keep them going longer. I think if you flip that to fashion, that doesn't happen. It's like you've washed it 10 times, it's peeled, you don't like the colour, lives at the bottom of the wardrobe. You take it to we call it a charity shop. I don't know what you guys call it in the States.
Yeah, effectively the same.
Yeah, same thing. And I think a lot of outdoor gear does last longer, just because it's inherently how it's built and what it's built for. It is burly and it's tough. So yeah, that.
You're right. It does. I mean, it does really last longer. And I think you see the growing movement. Like the biggest partner we have here on the show is with geartrade.com, who's a secondhand retailer. And how we keep things in rotation longer. And they've made it really easy on, their customers, like, we'll send you a box to ship it to us. But, that's still probably a challenge, right? Because it still takes action on people to do it. But I guess, when you look at things, like I mentioned last week on the show, we were talking a little bit about Houdini's new store up in Stockholm they're opening, which is very circular based.
Yep.
And, I know I think the notion of a circular economy has existed probably since like the 1960s or 70s. It's been not a recent thing, but it also seems like a very smart thing, especially when you see what's happened since the 60s or 70s in terms of consumption, right? So
fully, yeah.
From your standpoint at Wrapped, do you ever talk about circular practices? How do we take things back? I think you guys are doing as much as you can on a transparency point of view. Like, how do we provide as much information to consumers so they can make decisions? But even that's sort of wrought with challenges, right? Because it's like, a consumer is mostly going to buy things off of fit and look and feel, right?
Yep.
The more educated may look at the label, great. But how do we then know that, hey, at the end, when you're done with this, here's what you do. How do we get to that point?
Yeah, we're looking at it a lot at the minute. So kind of go back to your first question. Have we looked at circularity? 100% yes. So where are we? Probably 4 or 5 years ago, we launched a jacket that was a monopolymer jacket. So full polyester face, polyester membrane, polyester backer, polyester tape, with the thinking that if it's a monopolymer, it's easier to get to an end of life solution and basically take it apart at the end of its life. We got asked a lot of questions. What do I do with it at the end of its life? And the honest answer was, back then and still is, we don't know. But we're future-proofing our kind of design process by going, when it's possible, this will be easier to take apart. And then there's an easier end-of-life solution. Since then, it's been a bit of a pet project. We've looked at what to do.
Yeah.
And there still isn't a solution. And it's multiple. So it's like, how do you deal with the end of life of product? So if it's polyester, do you go down chemical recycling and degradation, or do you go mechanical? Then what you do with it? And we've traveled to a couple of plants recently where they're looking at soft drink bottles. So the soft drink bottle industry is a closed loop within reason. If we put, let's say, a downpour jacket into that loop, it discolors the chips. Therefore, the soft drink bottle is no longer clear. Consumers want a clear bottle.
Right.
So that's no avenue for that. So what do you do with it? It's kind of, and then you need to go back into fabric, but the fabric's been made in Asia, used in the US or Europe. There's no fabrics made in the US or Europe, so it needs to go back to Asia. So where we've got to is it's something we're looking at, but it's a society issue, and there's a lot of legislation coming in the EU at the minute about end of life of product and instructing and giving people instructions on what to do. So that's where we're looking at product passports, building RFID into our product. To say we build a really great jacket that lasts 10, 15 years and then someone goes, I don't want it. You go, what the hell's that made from? It's like the badge has fallen off, the care label's been cut out. What is it? So potentially you go to a recycling plant, RFID scan it, you go, oh, cool, it's full polyester. I'll put it in the left-hand green basket, and then I know it's going to get shredded mechanically here and go back into that. That's not there for anybody. So whether it's...
the infrastructure definitely needs to be created, and I do think of the end consumer too, because they have to make it easy in the consumer. I use the comparison of the organics industry, right? It's like, and I still believe, I'm sure most people don't understand what an organic apple versus a non-organic apple means. They might, this is healthier. Like, nah, it's just it was grown better. Grown better is basically the difference. But
not even grown
right?
better, just grown with less impact.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's stickered and it says organic, and it makes it easy for the consumer to go, oh, I want that one. I'm happy to spend 20 extra cents, for this apple. That's a much more complicated thing to apply that to apparel. I understand that, but I also feel like that's what we have to do. I mean, it's because for the consumers to rely on the consumer to say, oh, I understand all of this, and I'm going to buy this one because it's never going to happen. It's too hard. It's too complicated.
You touched on something else then. It's like, okay, it's 20 cents more for an organic apple. Again, you get into society issues like there is a cost of living crisis globally. So are we saying that you can only reduce your impact if you're affluent? It's like, wow, that's a
Right.
Pretty interesting conversation to get into, I think. So,
so it really comes down to, infrastructure and regulation. And I do know regulation. I'm not sure if you can speak to this at all from Rab's perspective, but like here in the U.S., I know there's been a big push. I had a gentleman named Ken Pucker on a few months back, one of our first guests actually, and he and I worked together at Timberland. He was the COO of Timberland when I was there, and oversaw their nutrition label efforts, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, because you guys are doing something similar. But he's behind this thing called the New York Fashion Act, which is basically disclosure on, greenhouse emissions and things like that from from fashion brands. And to his point, I think it was either 1 or 0 outdoor brand that was actually on board with supporting that. And because look, it basically says if this passes in New York, if you want to sell in New York, there's a certain number of disclosures you have to provide, if you don't, you're going to be fined major sums of money. And again, I think putting your money where your mouth is here, it's like, well, if you truly care about the environment, this is a smart thing. And also, by the way, if it passes in New York City's in New York, like everyone's going to participate in this. And so then it was a little disheartening to hear that only 1, or it could have been 0. I want to be optimistic and say it was 1 outdoor brand was on board with this. Where's your position on something like that? In terms of like regulatory, is that something you would support?
With kind of legislation coming in.
Yeah.
It's coming. It is absolutely coming. A lot of what we've done recently is in response to that. It's almost a future-proof what we're doing, knowing that where we're at, we had a pretty good idea, but in the next couple of years, there will be EU legislation. There's California legislation coming in. Mm-hmm. There's a rumor of different things in Norway, Benelux. Germany's got a different thing. France brought something in last year, which kind of maybe contradicts some of the EU stuff. I think that is the only way that we will get towards a circular economy. It's a diktat. You need to do this, guys, and it's hard. And there's a lot of brands are just looking at it, going, "Wow, this is a whole nother level that we're not ready for yet." So.
But I think it is required when you do see the level of reporting, and you go through scope 1, 2, 3 emission reporting, and how many people actually report on scope 3s, and things like that. Like real quick to point out, look at our scope 1s, look what we did. But then scope 3s, we're not going to talk about that.
Look here, but don't look at this one.
But I agree. It's also, and just the complicated nature of it. And to your point, back to the beginning of our conversation, it's a capitalist society, right? So
completely.
I can be critical while also understand. I used to be a sales manager. I definitely understand, right? At the same time,
hands up, I'm sure you love buying new toys and geeking out on gear.
Well,
I do.
Of course, it's fun to get new stuff.
Yeah.
Especially I think folks of our generation, come on, stuff was it. I try to tell my kids, hey, we didn't have Amazon. We didn't have these things. When I was a kid, my birthday and Christmas were a big deal because those are the only 2 times a year that I got stuff. And then then I grow up and now I can get stuff whenever I want. It's not surprising.
And discounted through mates as well, I'm sure, in the industry.
Right.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Or, what do you mean discount? Just send it to me.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Cinder. So, can you a peek behind the scenes of how Cinder came together and kind of the rationale for the launch?
Yeah, sure. Rab's in an interesting place in different markets. It's in different stages of a brand evolution. So in the UK, we are the big brand. In Europe, we are mainland Europe. We are kind of one of the small upstart brands, kind of getting a bit bigger. Mm-hmm. In the US, I think, and we feel that we're still deemed quite sort of small and niche. Was that a fair kind of assessment?
If I went into an outdoor retailer, I wouldn't be surprised to see Rab, but I also wouldn't be surprised to not see Rab. I guess it'd probably be
sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go into a retailer here, 40% of the shop will be Rab.
Sure.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, from a commercial point of view, how do we expand our line and keep growing? We don't want to go any wider. We don't want to try and be a brand we're not and go into fast fashion and kind of selling out. So therefore, that's us looking at how we deliver more for our existing customers. Equally, we did a lot of work and kind of went, actually, Rab people cycle and cyclists wear Rab. But that jacket that you already wear is kind of okay for cycling. If it was a little bit slimmer in the body, a bit less flappy in the arm, slightly longer hem, bit shorter at the front, and we put a bit more pre-curve in, it'll be amazing for cycling. So that's kind of why we did it. A lot of cyclists here, knowing that people already wear a lot of Rab product for cycling, but actually just tweaking it and putting it together as a whole package. It's interesting. It's kind of a slow burn. It's a bit of a passion project for a few people here as well.
I believe that.
We wanted to do it. It's cool. It's like I cycle. A lot of the other directors cycle. My boss cycles. So
well, see, this is probably why I maybe had some questions outside of the making stuff conversation, which I think is valid. But to your point, like, yeah, look, you got to make things and we got to sell it. Totally understand it. But cycling is weird. Because I think if you're a cyclist, I think you're going to understand this. Like, I cycle, right? But I'm probably like you. Like, I'm a general outdoor enthusiast, and every general outdoor enthusiast bikes. However, there are bike people, and bike people I feel like carry that "don't come stand on my corner" vibe, right? It's like no, I buy these brands. This is what I recognize. Now, at the same time, that's the Rafa bike person, right? Now, also on that bike corner is I just get my shit at the charity shop.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, equally, the guy post-ride, you got the guy in Rafa, you got the guy in Fox or whatever, or Endure in the middle. All of those guys will probably have a Rab Microlite jacket on in the evening, irrespective of which clique they identify with when they're actually on a bike. Does that make sense? That's where we're going, actually, look, you guys are all cyclists and you guys are mountain people, but you're all wearing this kind of this anyway.
But where do you get that feedback? Like, how do you, like, is that just an intuition? Is that something has there been market research that kind of shows that?
I think it's living and breathing it. We're all out cycling, we're out climbing, we're out skiing in Europe, in the States, in the UK. You see it, you go camping with a family at a weekend, you go for a bike ride with your mates on a Saturday. I don't know, but I can't switch off from looking at what people are wearing and what they're doing. It's my job. So I'm doing it all the time.
It drives my kids crazy. It drives my kids absolutely crazy. And I haven't been in the industry for like 6 years, and I still just like, especially shoes. I'm like, we were in Italy this summer, and I'm just like pointing out, I'm like, okay, see, that's a US brand. You see, like, this is where you see the penetration of US culture. They're like, Dad, are you looking at everybody's shoes? I'm like, no.
I get the same thing. It's like walking down the street, and it's like, head turn. And your wife's like, are you looking at her? It's like, no, I was looking at her bag. It's like, you were. You totally were.
No, I was really.
No. I mean, she's like, yeah, you were. I know you were. So fully.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I think we just see it. We've got lots of different cyclists here. So we got skiers, climbers. We've got people that go out and ride a road bike a lot in Lycra, ride a gravel bike fast, equally ride a gravel bike in mountain biking apparel, and then other people that go out full-on gravity-inspired downhill biking. So you kind of just know, all of you go and wear a Microlite afterwards, or a Rab fleece or Rab waterproof. So kind of putting two and two together was the logical progression.
I guess I maybe then is the other kind of my counter to that is just what it definitely triggered something in me. Like, and by the way, I had the same kind of words for Outdoor Research, who just did something similar as well.
Sure, yeah.
There is a lot of what you're offering, I feel like, in the Cinder line available. You were kind enough to send me a couple pieces. I appreciate that. And I put the hoodie on. And look, it's a wonderful piece. It fits great. I totally understand it. I probably have 3 other hoodies that I could say, yeah, this is a lot like that. And that's so it kind of like, when then you kind of, and that's not that's not a knock on the product. Product's good, right? And to your point, I know what's going to last. I know also without that Rab label, if it didn't last, that would be more upsetting to you than anything else, probably. But it is when now you kind of line it up, right? And now I'm a typical cycling consumer, and I'm shopping, and I see the whole lineup, and I've got cycling brands making something similar, and I've got outdoor brands making something similar. And you're right, you're going to make a passionate choice based off of who you are as an individual. It's a tough hill to climb, right? To kind of break into that market.
Yeah, I think one of the things we identified was it depends where it's sold, and it depends what the brands are. So I think if you look at a lot of bike brands who actually make bikes, they absolutely geek out and focus on hardware and travel and geometry and and then soft goods are deemed accessories,
Right.
We
Right.
we flip that on its head and go, we deliver that level of geekery and geometry and kind of perfection in fabrics and fit that they do on bikes, but we do that in soft goods. We don't do the hardware.
Yeah.
So it's the same level of performance, but it's what we do.
Mhm.
We make really great fitting apparel and product that performs fantastically. And what we set out to do is to bring our kind of knowledge, experience, fit, cut, fabric tech into an area where we know our customers are already working and where we operate as well. So I think if you look at kind of bike brands, this might be a little bit inflammatory, but I would say that our fabric tech and fit is better than bike brands doing apparel. Is it much different to other outdoor brands? Maybe not that different. Is it sold in places where we're strong? Yes. Is it sold in places where they're strong? Is their stuff sold where we're strong? No, and vice versa. So, and that's why kind of our Rab Cinder range hasn't been a global release. So it's not in every market. Yeah, it's not in every market. Okay. So,
well, that was going to be my follow-up question is, anytime you launch a new extension business unit, whatever you want to call, that's, a ton of effort and money behind the scenes as well. Like, I was talking about, I've talked a lot about, and also Loa entering the trail running market. And I don't doubt Loa can make a great trail running shoe. I think that's kind of the other thing back to our part of the beginning part of the conversation of like making stuff has gotten, if anything, it's gotten easier, right? I mean, you and I right now we could come up with like 3 ideas and in like 10 days have prototypes. I mean, it's kind of like, it's not, the infrastructure is in place. And I can't remember the last time. It was probably the early, like 2005 timeframe where I was trying on shoes. I'm like, these just don't work right or they don't fit right. I mean, since then, things have really gotten dialed. However, how you launch, if you're serious about it, and it's a multi-year commitment, right, to kind of find success in that new market. Because even if Loa comes out with the best trail running shoe that's ever been made, and like you can objectively claim that, you still got to go through. First of all, Brooks, Asics, all these guys, and then right, and then now the Hokas and the Ons and the Ultras who are all crushing it to get to the top. So when you look at something like Cinder, and even if you're like, we have got it, like this is the thing, right? You still have to go on that journey, and then the hard part of that journey, I feel like, just in my past experiences, if you don't kind of crush it out of the gates. Then the people who are writing the checks go, are we sure we want to be doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. We're a year down the line from it? Kind of for when we launched it, I think it's a bit later in the US.
Sure.
We've done a classic thing which we're aware of now, in that we've totally geeked out on the fabric tech and the fit, and that's what we've communicated. And in hindsight, would we do it differently next time? If we did it again, we would probably do it a bit differently. And we've done a classic British thing of queuing up nice and neatly and apologising for doing something really well, rather than being full American, standing on the rooftops going, hell yeah, look at this. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, it's a British trait, I think. It's a British brand, British traits. And that's something we need to get better at. So, I mean,
what would you do differently if you were doing it today? What do you think? What is the thing to lean into? If before it was like, we're just the things you mentioned, like
the geeky bit.
Yeah, what's the real selling point on the Cinder line in your point of view?
I think it would be, boil it right down to that. If you wear this, if you buy this and wear this, you will have a better experience in your adventure, because you will
almost
be
call out the competition.
Yeah, kind of. You will be drier, warmer, more comfortable, more variable about kind of maintaining the comfort you want to be at. So it's that.
Like, let's lead the horse to water a little more, right?
Yeah, so we did that classic thing of kind of telling people what it is rather than telling them what the actual benefit is to them.
Right. Well, and that's kind of back to my point of what the industry continues to do, right? Stop telling people how innovative things and tell them how much better their experience is going to be. Because we all expect stuff to work now. And I mean that for guys like you and me.
It's a given. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that, and we grew up when stuff didn't work.
Oh my God! I remember my first jacket. I have never been so wet and cold.
Right? No, that's what I mean about the innovation conversation. Like, it was real. I've told this story before, probably in sales meetings and on this podcast. But in the early '80s, my brother, I thought he was a genius because I grew up in Pennsylvania. It would snow, and he would take a tube sock, cut 5 holes in it and put it on over his hand so that he could have it under his glove to protect his wrist from the snows, because it was truly, how long can you last outside today? And now we can go out for as long as we want. And
Yeah.
that's, I think I even maybe mentioned it on the Polar Tech podcast, because it was just, hey, like, stop selling people on features, sell them on the experience, because my kids just assume that everything has always worked, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think that's kind of a change thing, isn't it? People trust brands. If you buy a product from Apple, you know it will work. You don't even bother looking at it.
Right.
It's that you trust the brand. Interesting, that loops back to some of the kind of the CSR and environmental communication we're talking about. It's an assumption that you trust the brand.
You want to anyway.
To give you what you expect, or a retailer. So,
well, that's good. That's a good segue. So into kind of your nutrition label. So I was at Timberland 2006 when they rolled out their nutrition label on shoes. And it was this effort to kind of inform consumers of what they were buying. I will never forget, we had these quarterly rallies, and Jeff Swartz was our CEO at times up there, and they're putting it up, and we're like, and I remember at the time feeling like, oh my God, this is everyone's going to do this, and everyone's going to have widespread adoption, and it's going to be like the organic food thing, and everyone's going to be like, oh, like, well, this shoe has this and whatever. But then after a few years, it kind of quietly went away. And I tried to dig around, and I emailed a few friends who still work there. I haven't heard back from them, but it just said, it kind of get the sense of the big reason it didn't work at the time is because no one else did get on board. And so consumers didn't know what to compare it to. It was sort of like, well, there it is. It has this in it. Like, is that good? Is that bad? So tell me about launching Rab's version. It's actually quite similar when I was looking at photos of the old one to the Timberland one.
You did mention it, and hands up, I feel really dumb that we didn't know about it. So we didn't. I know, honestly.
You shouldn't.
Like, what?
It was like 4 years and gone. I mean,
it's interesting. It's like I had a proper Google, found one. I was like, wow, nope. And interesting, we have shared this with a lot of journalists and kind of people. No one's mentioned it. So just checking, you weren't like head of marketing that launched it, were you? Just where like well, you weren't head of marketing. I'm not putting my foot in it here. No.
I was a tech rep when I was at Timberland.
Okay, cool. Just making sure I don't offend you completely. But going, what the hell? That worked well.
No, not at all. And frankly, it's not surprising. I was wondering if maybe you guys look back and you're like, oh, they tried this and we built, but it's like that's not surprising to me.
100%, completely unaware of it. Like kicking myself that we didn't. How did it come about? Material Facts, 2-year project, and it's kind of come about 2 ways. One from lots of retailers asking us for the same information 10 different ways. So they're going, is this recycled? Does this have fluorocarbons in? Is this bit that? Does this tick this box? Is it fair wear? And our team's just getting loads of requests for information. And then when we did send that information out, it was then being interpreted different ways by different retailers, and they're putting their own parameters on it. So what one person's recycled is 50%, another person's recycled is 75%. Is it?
You're right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, hang on. Recycled to me means it's recycled.
Right.
Half of one bit of it is recycled isn't good enough. Isn't clear. So we got to a point, kind of, and it went through many iterations over 2 years of going, how do we communicate this clearly so that it can't be misinterpreted? And we looked at almost going, our benchmark will be 50%. And then we dug a bit deeper, continued to dig into it, and just went, that's not enough, because that's only one element, and it's main body fabric. Let's take a jacket. Main body fabric,
right,
is the biggest thing on that. So we got to a point of going, actually, we need to build something that just lists it out and gives it to the consumer and allow them to make their own decisions. In the same way that a nutrition label does on food, it's covered in red. It's pretty obvious it's not going to be very good for you. It's full of green. It's probably okay. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting project. So actually, we now supply Material Facts tables with all our products to retailers and on our website and for retailers' websites so that consumers can make up their own mind.
Yeah.
Rather than being fed a picture of a green tree or a green stamp or something.
Well, yeah, that's always the fun thing.
It's
back to my point about consumers. They want to just be absolved of guilt, right? I mean, it's just ultimately like,
it comes back to that trust.
Yeah.
Oh, it's from them. It must be okay.
Right.
And it's like, well, actually, have you dug into it? Do you know? Really? Is it? And I think that comes from kind of consumer education and learning within society.
Yeah.
And it comes back to where we got to with material facts. It's very much about trying to avoid greenwashing. We don't want our products to be greenwashed by other people in misinterpreting some of the information that we give them and it being marketed incorrectly. So it's going, look, here it is, guys. You make up your own mind. It's like full transparency, full honesty on what's in here, to the best of our knowledge.
How do you gauge success though, too, right? Because you have I'm the educated consumer because of what I did for so long. You are as well. You go into a shop and you're kind of like looking at it and you pick it up. And I look at the label and you see the recycled content or amount of fluorocarbons or whatever. Like those are buzzwords, triggers for me, right? And I might then scan the QR code. I might just do like, okay, well, that's on their website. Let me do some independent searching. Most consumers probably, they're looking for the greenwashing, frankly. Like they don't know that they are, but it's just they want to know, again, be like, oh, this has made with recycled content. Ah, sweet. I've solved climate change by wearing this jacket, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Even lighter than that, if it's got the right badge on it, they make an assumption.
Totally. No, and I saw out of the EU last week that they're working on banning phrases, like nature's best and, and sustainable and things like that.
Yeah. That completely comes down to that greenwashing thing.
Totally.
Like, what is it like? Made better.
So, but how do you, for that person who maybe isn't educated but still looks at the label, how, because it is a little vague. I mean, and not that it's vague. It's very on the nose. But in terms of maybe that person doesn't understand what they're looking at, right? How do you bridge that gap for that person and maybe future iterations?
Getting more people on board and it becoming a thing.
Yeah.
So we made it. We got to the same point. We're going, we've done this. Great. Actually, ultimately, we don't want this to be ours. We want to open source it, and we kind of put a call to arms to other brands, going, here it is, join us, and actually let's make this an industry-wide thing, which is great. And we've engaged with quite a few big brands. I think, in fact, some big, some small, some footwear, some apparel. I think everyone's a little bit on the fence, so it's kind of a bit like. Need a bit of like, come on, guys, get off the fence. Let's make this a thing. Let's do it.
That's and that's it was the question I had. If you engage with other brands, you have, and that's another thing that frustrates me with the industry in general. Is it's like, we have everyone. This is the perfect thing to align on and create the standard. If you don't want, if only one person's supporting the New York Fashion Act, then get together and say, well, this is what the standard should be for the outdoor industry, or this type of outdoor industry anyway. And it's. That was the one thing I was critical of, and it wasn't that they did anything wrong, but in Houdini's thing last week, I'm like, well, if I go to the Stockholm store, it's still only going to be Houdini stuff, right? And it's if I want to shop Patagonia secondhand, well, I got to go to Patagonia's secondhand store, and if I want to shop the North Face, like, well, they don't do a secondhand store, they only like recreate things out of damage. It's like, okay, it's like, well, guys, if you could all get your shit together,
we want other people to use a standard. If it's not quite what we've got now, great, we'll move on. But let's just stop messing around and kind of giving, here's our version. Actually, we're going to say that. We're going to say it's recycled because our parameters 50%. Oh, yours is 60. It's a bit of a standardization. I do genuinely hope that the legislation that's coming in actually starts to drive this forward a bit more. I think otherwise consumers just aren't going to know where they stand.
They can't. It's not fair. You can't.
Yeah.
It's almost a burden of knowledge to know what we know. I'd rather just be like, I need completely. A coat. I'm going to go buy a coat.
Yeah, but then you go, oh, actually, it's the recycled polyester one less damaging than the nylon one. Maybe, but then the nylon one will last longer. But that's £100. But then it's £100 more. Yeah.
Well, hey, man, to wrap up, man, as cynical as I may sound at times, like I think I said to you before we started recording, my views definitely came from a career spent at brands, and it's a love of the community and the industry and just wanting to be better. I think I want how we present ourselves to be the way that we are, and so it's a little bit of trying to be the voice in the room, kind of raising some concerns. But as we kind of wind down, what do you think we can expect from these initiatives, from Rab in general? Like, what do you want the brand to be? Regardless of financial goals or market share, those things. What can and should brand Rab be?
For me, absolutely staying core and authentic to what we do and what we want it to be. See, we're in an interesting position where we're a pretty small business. We're privately owned. It can be what we want it to be. And on the whole, we are mountain people that go climbing, go cycling, go running, go skiing. And it's not, for me as kind of product director, it's not trying to be a brand that we're not and trying to emulate someone else or selling out into kind of fast fashion and stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of pretty cool. We love what we do. Keep doing that.
Well, and from an industry and community perspective, I mean, what do you think is missing right now? Is that, are there some of the things we talked about? Is there something that kind of nags at you the way some of these things nag at me?
I think the other thing I just want to highlight is doing material facts was interesting. Looking internally, we thought we knew a lot, and then actually working on material facts, we really lifted the lid and dug into all the little bits and went, "Ooh, actually, we don't know about that. Do we know? Oh, actually, if we change this, it would do that." So it made us way more thorough. And equally, it's highlighted where we still have a gap and where we need to improve. So we go, okay, 76% recycled. What about that 10% there and that 3% there? How do we nail that? So it helps steer us where to focus our efforts, which is great. Rather than going, it's recycled.
Positive unintended consequences, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, so it's good. Just something else to highlight. It was an interesting exercise.
That's great.
A lot of hard work by a lot of people.
Can imagine, but still have a long way to go, it seems. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Just need other people to get on board as well. That'd be great. It'd be a thing. Definitely.
Well, Tim, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
Great. Lovely to chat. Thank you.
All right, buddy. All right, that's our show for today. Big thanks to Rab and to my guest, Tim Fish, and I hope that anyone else who has been on the receiving end of our rocks here at The Rock Fight understands that this is a dialogue. If you don't like something we've talked about on the show, reach out. Drop an email to myrockfight@gmail.com. Please follow or subscribe and give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. Subscribing and rating is the single best way to support the show, so please hook us up with that support. We'll be back soon with more outdoor ideas that aim for the head. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening, and here to take us out is Krista Makes from Less Than Jake with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock Fight.